Previously on agentpalmer.com, Middle American culture clash on full display in Vietnam-era friendly fire. Beware the storm, short but mighty. And since last episode, Tony's been preparing for his upcoming book launch this fall titled Precipice of Nowhere. This is the Palmer Files, episode 181, featuring Nettie Reynolds, who's here to talk about having many job titles and occupations while always continuing to be a writer. We discuss what she's done, where she intends to go, plus reading, writing, obviously, grief, and much, much more. Are you ready? Let's do the show!
Third grade me, when I was third grade, I started talking about wanting to be a writer. And I am a writer, and I've done that all my life. You can be with people for weeks at a time and none of them ask you, what do you do? And people would just move away from us. And because we're kind of introverted, it was lovely. I'm not what I do for a living, but I am what I do for myself and others. Reading at night gives me kind of a break from myself.
Hello and welcome to the Palmer Files. I'm your host, Jason Stershic, also known as Agent Palmer, and on this 181st episode is Nettie Reynolds. I first encountered Nettie's writing when my mom shared with me an article on grief Nettie had written. After reading that article, I reached out. It's that simple. That article was so intriguing, I had to meet the writer behind it. And meet we did. This episode is our first conversation, though probably not our last. In it, you'll hear us discuss the many occupations and jobs and titles Nettie has held through the years, as well as the importance of her largest passion, writing. Plus, don't get put in a square. A job is just a job, not who you are. The stages of grief, reading, writing, names, personas, all that and much more is coming your way shortly. But first, remember that if you want to discuss this episode as you listen or afterward, you can find all related ways to contact Nettie and myself in the show notes. There, you can connect with Nettie on LinkedIn or subscribe to her Substack. Don't forget, you can see all of my writings and rantings on agentpalmer.com. And of course, email can be sent to thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. So without further ado, let's get into it. Nettie, I just want to run down this real quick. Writer, marketer, manager, strategist, chaplain, communications director, and both for-profit and non-profit.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
And then I'm an essayist, Pushcart Prize nominee. So
And I usually talk to people about what they do for a while and then ask them the question I'm about to ask you. But I feel like it's most important, having done that whole list with you, that I go, let's go back. What did you want to be? Like, have you covered some of the bases from, like, I don't know, 16-year-old you, 10-year-old you?
Third grade me. When I was third grade, I started talking about wanting to be a writer.
Okay.
And I am a writer, and I've done that all my life. And I've had, three 10-minute plays produced. I've been in the 1-minute play festival. When I was in my probably late 30s, I wanted to grow up and be a chaplain, a hospital chaplain, for when I retired out of marketing. And I actually was able to do that at 45. And I was a chaplain for about 6.5 years. And then I came back to writing. And then right now I'm getting my second master's degree, which makes me a master's of another thing, whatever. In fine arts, and okay. I'm doing that in creative nonfiction. So my hope now is, I'm 61. My hope is that once I finish this, and if I continue publishing as I have, I will be an adjunct professor, and I'll be a little old lady professor in my 80s of writing.
Okay. And would teacher actually be something new to add to that list, or have you done that?
Professor would definitely be. I have been a teacher, not in a formalized, school ISD setting, but I have taught writing courses, online and stuff. But I wouldn't highlight that because I think, that was before I'm getting a true curriculum MFA. Okay. And so that is really, really a proper thing to do for me to be able to teach on at a professor level.
So what was it? And I guess to a certain point still is it about writing that keeps you going? Because I will tell you, I was a reader way back when in fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth grade. Actually, I was more on a math track, and then I ran into an English teacher that made me the reader, and then it kind of went away a little bit, and then it came back. So at least for me, it is not always. I've not always been a writer, and I've not always been a reader, and I find that those things go together. But for you, I mean, obviously, you went back to third grade and said, "I wanted to be a writer." So has it maintained? Has it been the whole time?
Yeah. Yes. And it hasn't been so much that I got my undergrad at Goddard College and I wrote, it's an unpublished novel, which I'm actually working on again now, called The Sunflower Dress. But I've always been a writer.
Okay.
I wrote one time, I used to write to really famous authors. And one time I wrote a really hilarious letter to Roy Blunt Jr., and I asked him to marry me on David Letterman, or at least have a beer with me in this place in Austin, or read something funny that I'd written. And of course, my letter was really funny. And he wrote back and said he had so many people that wanted him to read funny things. And he was married, which of course he was. So he couldn't have a beer with me in Austin. But he told me that by the sound of my letter, he could tell I was a writer, and that he had written to E.B. White and asked him to read something funny, and E.B. White did not read it for Roy, but he did tell him, if you can't but not write, you're a writer. So I'm a can't but not write. That's how I make sense of everything.
Okay.
Everything. Story and writing is how I live my life.
Okay. And do you write every day?
No, I don't write every day, but I write in my head every day. And a lot of my work now is in my head. And by the time I get to where I'm going to, create a full essay or those kind of things, I already have it really close in my head. I also will, when I write plays, I hear a character say something, and then I start listening to their story and write down what they are thinking about or talking about. It's not channeling or something. It's still coming from my creative, tuning in to what I care about, but it's still, it's there. And so sometimes when I do that, I'll be recording in my car on my phone app, my voice app, and I'll just start recording a play back and forth, and then I'll put it on paper, and then I'll keep working it.
Do you have a not to pigeonhole you, but do you have a preferred medium? I mean, you've talked about essays, and obviously playwriting is a completely different kind of a thing. Yeah. So just any kind of writing, or
as far as creative writing, even anything I do, I ascribe to Laurie Anderson, who's one of my heroes, and her take on someone, as soon as they want to put you in a block or a square of what you do, you need to quickly break out of that. So I write all things that I think about, and I try to, if I think they're funny and my grown adult children think they're funny, it means I have a beat on something good. I used to have my mom read everything, but she passed away 6 years ago. And so I just follow the form that comes to me. But I will say that my goal is to really spend the rest of my life learning the creative nonfiction form and continuously getting better and better at it.
Okay.
And then I storytell. So I'm a storyteller. I tell a lot of stories that I write. So that's a different way of writing, because if you're writing that the story is going to be live, that's a whole different animal than if you're writing and circling around things to bring the reader closer to the page. With the storytelling, you want to bring the reader into a whole community that's listening to the story. So you're almost, you're the storyteller, but the feelings that you want people to have is a communal thing.
Okay. And obviously public speaking is important in that kind of a role. I mean, was that always easy? Or
it's never easy, but it's gotten easier because I love it so much once I get on stage. But I used to take those, what is it? I think they're beta blockers or something, to be able to tell a story on stage somewhere. And then I'm married to a punk rock harmonica player. And when we started seeing each other, he would come to my stories and he would see me just get so anxious and just really be in a bad state. But then I'd go on to go pretty good. And so he said, you have to pick, like, you have to find a way to enjoy it even before you get on the stage.
Okay.
Because you're going to love it a lot more. And so I did. I started finding ways to just be really thrilled to be there.
Now, are you a performative storyteller? Like, are we talking you're sitting on a stool, or are we pacing around with arms moving and
It depends. I mean, I have done 3 one-woman shows, and I would call those performative because I was, performing different parts of my life at different times, and I had costumes and things like that. But if I'm just telling a story, I don't sit on a stool, because I think you need to be standing and having good breath and making sure the audience knows that you're there for them, to get them to, all commune. And so I just mostly stand. I don't like walk and pace.
So I'm curious. Obviously, writing is a big part of almost any job, especially the titles that I went through at the beginning.
Yeah.
But that does not mean that while you're a communications director or, a manager, that you are scratching your creative itch during that time, during that 9 to 5, if it's a full-time job. So were you writing when you came home? Were you, was there, there's always something additional in addition to whatever's, paying the bills?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, again, I'm very lucky because I've been able to now move to what I call this third act of my life. With my husband, we moved to Chicago, where he was born. And I'm very lucky because I was laid off, I think in October of 2025, and I haven't been able to find a full-time content job again because AI has so impacted that sector. However, that has given me a great opportunity to do part-time gigs and to also write more. And honestly, to be able to write more is the greatest thing. Write and read more books has been the greatest gift I could have been given, off of being laid off, even though I think for everyone, being laid off is really, it's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
It's very challenging.
The word that comes to mind is traumatic. And I guess I've been fortunate enough to only have been laid off twice, but and both times I saw it coming. So it wasn't like that very much like you show up and you don't know, but even when you see it coming, it's still, oh God, what's next?
Yeah.
And and like you, I was fortunate enough to have a hobby. And look, it's not a full-time gig now, but I had a hobby that gave me skills that allowed me to edit podcasts for money, that's
great.
Again, it's not like a happenstance thing. It's not something I sought. It happened and I'm happy for it. But whenever anybody tells me a story about getting laid off, I immediately go back to the last 2 and I go like, all right, well, I've been there. Like, I don't, it is years now. It is almost, we're approaching a decade or like 8 or 9 years, and I can still feel it.
Yeah, it feels very shaming, even if you see it coming.
Yeah.
If you don't see it coming and you're doing a good job, we're taught in the system that we operate in under, capitalism that, you do good work, you show up every day, you care about your teammates, you do all the, ridiculous Myers-Briggs and DISC and all of those to be a better manager. And I'm sure those are helpful to some people, but you do everything. And then at the end of the day, it's just a job now. I mean, and really it impacts people at so much of a younger age now. What most frightens me is people who come out of college with a lot of debt and they can't get work, or they always had a digital divide or something that was already working against them, or they've done everything and they're middle managers and a company just says, well, we're going to wipe out our whole marketing group or whatever it may be. And they've got little kids and they've got commitments. And I think it must be very, very challenging right now for those folks.
The thing that now, granted, I had a great manager when I was working in nonprofit tourism for, I don't know, 8 or 9 years. And it was a change in leadership there, which is the reason that I was let go.
Yep.
Which is why I saw it coming. But it was my manager for those 7 years who was let go with me. That was my first professional job, non-retail, non-fast food job. And I don't know how early on, but I want to say it was the first or second week I was working there. I stayed a little late, and my boss was like, "We're not saving lives. We're not. It's not a hospital. Like, it can wait until tomorrow. I mean, there are some deadlines that cannot wait,
of course.
But that is a lesson that I took to heart for the next, for as long as I was there. And after that, because my next job was only for a few months. After all of that, it really became a thing where I realized that I had broken out of the cycle, which is my job is not who I am.
Yeah.
And it is kind of a little bit of what you're saying, because I think and I'm surrounded by people who are in many ways more talented than I am, that are boxed in to their job, not necessarily what they're good at. I have a friend who's in insurance. He's a great writer. Those are not the same things, right? I have a friend who's doing communications work who is a great artist in the sense that he can do graphics and video and but that's not what they're doing. So to me, I think, all right, my cheat code has been achieved. Like I edit podcasts, but it's not who I am.
Yeah.
And so I try to, I don't know, nudge them out of their so what do you do? I'm an insurance. No, that's your job. That's not
exactly.
And I have to ask, obviously I think you and I are similar in that it was that traumatic removal of the standard 9 to 5 that kind of put us in this place where we're no longer what we do. We can then determine it, but along your resume, I'm sure there were times, even when you were coming home and writing for yourself, where if I asked you what are you, you would have said what, like the job you have from 9 to 5, right?
Yeah, because I think, it's funny because one of my stepdaughters lives in Italy, and you can be with people for weeks at a time and none of them ask you, what do you do? And you really start tuning into that, you know? And then when I was a chaplain for those 6.5 years, I was a hospital chaplain and then a hospice chaplain during COVID. It was funny because my husband and I, if we, met new people or did things before COVID hit together, by day he was a customer support person, and by night, he's a punk musician. So if we went to a party and someone said, well, what do you do? I would say, I'm a chaplain. And then he would say, I play harmonica. I'm a punk harmonica musician. And people would just move away from us. And because we're kind of introverted, it was lovely, because that's crazy. Who wants to talk to that coupling? So that's kind of where I learned when I was a chaplain. It was a great gift because I learned I am not what I do. I am what I do I'm not what I do for a living, but I am what I do for myself and others.
Yes.
That I ascribe to, being of good service, doing good and doing well.
Yeah. And I think that it's probably more noble than any of the other things. And I say that as someone who, continuing to try and nudge my friends in, I know you need a job. I'm not telling any of them to quit, but I am saying when you meet those people, those strangers, those happenstances at a party, at a function, you don't have to say what you do from 9 to 5. It can be what you do from 5 to 9, like whatever that is.
And I'm a real believer in, not to sound too new agey or anything, but speak it into existence. And so, every time that you are I would almost say reducing yourself to whatever is that 1/3 of the day, that 8 hours out of the 24 hours, to what you do for a living instead of who you are
Yeah.
when you are living. So who you are when you are living is different. And to me, that's more interesting. And that is the magic of life. And in doing that well, if art calls to you, if you're a plumber on the weekends, but you love being a plumber, but during the week you're in a suit and tie selling something.
Yeah.
Do more plumbing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not about like, I'm going to create the great next, James Michener novel, or I'm going to be Octavia Butler. I'm going to be in my present of what I am. I'm a gift too. And
Yeah.
so I'm going to live in the present. The present is the gift. And I'm going to be more focused, even by the things I say, to help me move forward on that, and to help myself hear it.
Yeah. And so obviously we've both come to this kind of from different places. How much did being a chaplain during your whole time, not just the COVID time, how much did that teach you about about whatever?
Me a great deal.
Yeah.
It taught me a great deal. And actually, people think it's a real depressing job. It's not. It has its moments, just like life has moments. Everybody, no one gets out of here alive. Everyone has bad and good things happen. And not to diminish the privilege I have as a white college educated woman, I have much privilege. And so I feel like with that privilege, I really need to be myself as much as I can, because that's what I can pass on. But being a chaplain just teaches you, first of all, to just be really quiet, to marvel at the tiniest of things, to learn why you laugh, and that, I can say, and I've not been able to count it, obviously, to exact numbers, but I can say during my career, I probably saw over 1,100 people pass away, from little babies beyond, especially my last years as a hospice chaplain. And, no grown adult ever asked me, could you help me clean out my inbox in my work email? They always ask me, could you call my son that I haven't talked to in 10 years? Could you please reach out to my wife, my ex-wife, and let her know what's happening? Could you, call my pastor or call my priest, or, could you just sit here with me and just let me talk about my life? So that taught me a great deal. That taught me just a ton of things that I learned. Most importantly, we all know we're dying. I mean, life is a mortal illness. I love Deepak Chopra's definition of it that he said on the Ron Burgundy podcast, which was one of my favorite podcasts ever. And Ron Burgundy asked him, Will Ferrell as Ron Burgundy asked him, what's the definition of life? And he said, well, it's a sexually transmitted disease that's fatal.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. So I have to ask you, before you were a chaplain, how good of a listener were you?
I was a pretty good listener, because I love hearing people's stories.
And after like your time as a chaplain, were you a better listener?
100%. 100%, because active listening means you be quiet and you listen to people. And before I was a chaplain, I would not call it active listening. It was kind of like, the programming we get, where it's like, now I need to respond. Now I need to do so. Now I need to be funnier, or now I need to say something that's a factoid that no one else could possibly know, to engage with this person. Well, that's boring. It's really fun to hear other people talk. And it's so incredible to be able, I had such a great career in that, to be able to sit and, I called it swimming in the river of sorrow, but I always stayed afloat, because I had to for all those patients.
Yeah.
And while they swam, I swam with them, and I watched them, and I I got to be witness to, everything that they were feeling and everything that they felt about their lives. And, grief isn't Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she didn't design those steps of grief, the stages of grief, as a linear list. So it's very nonlinear. And so you can have people that are just stay in anger till the end. Those patients often, I would, go by. I had this deal with this one Goodwill in Austin where I could come by and get all these plates, and they'd charge me like a nickel, 25 cents for a bag of plates. And I'd take it to those client houses and we'd break plates. Or sometimes I was called the cursing chaplain because I had patients that, I would let them curse. We would curse together at the terrible thing that had occurred. It's okay to have all those feelings. And so that was joy. That was pure joy to do that work.
So is there a inherent, especially when people found out you were a chaplain, was there an inherent okay, now I got to be on my bed. Like, did you see people change like the moment? Course. Okay. All right.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's why I never, even though I was held as a chaplain because you have to have a church to support you. And I was lucky because I had one of my mentors, Jim Rigby, who is still the pastor of St. Andrew Presbyterian Church. And you have to get a Master of Divinity to be a hospital chaplain. It doesn't give you like a white phone to the other side that blinks when you have a question. But yeah, there is that perception. I never got a call or got ordained. I was only community ordained because I did not want to go into a room and have my religious value impacted theirs.
Okay.
And I always wanted to just meet them where they were. And so I served all faiths, no faith, Wiccan faith. The fastest growing faith in our country is spiritual, as they're called SBNRs, but it's spiritual but not religious.
Okay.
So according to the Pew Internet Religious Landscape Study, which comes out every 2 years, that's a factoid that a chaplain nerd would know, not just normally anyone else would know.
I mean, so I don't know where I am on my spiritual journey. I'm 100% culturally Jewish, but I didn't marry or force my wife to convert. So technically my kid's not either, although, the grandparents will be. So it's, there'll be some of that. And I think I fall into that like spiritual, but not really a part of anything. And while my spirituality is based in Judaism, because that's what I grew up with, and it's, I guess, for lack of a better word, comfortable to fall back on. Mm-hmm. It's not like I don't belong to anything, and I haven't for a while. And I don't know where I'm at, because at any given time I'm either more or less spiritual, and I can't put a finger on why or what makes it change, as an example, from like, oh, okay, this time I'm, for whatever that means to me at that particular moment. If we were going to have a spiritual conversation, we're not. But if we were right now, we could record tomorrow and it would be different, in a week and in a month, it could be different. And it's weird to me that this has become my norm, but I think in a weird way, it goes back to what we were talking about with jobs, where I believe it should change. And even when we talk about like what you want to do the other 2/3 of the day, just because you want to be a writer in 3rd grade doesn't mean it's not okay to want to be something else at 16 and then come back.
Exactly.
Have you, like, obviously you were a chaplain, so there are certain, as you said, things you need to accomplish in order to attain that, job. But has your spirituality been as much a journey as anything else?
Oh, absolutely. Because, for me, it's more of being of service to others in wherever they find, especially in that job, wherever they find their solidity. And so it means, it can mean someone would rather have you read something from the Old Testament than the New Testament, or, someone who's, is a naturalist and they find their spirituality in a tree. And humanists, also are really interesting folks because you serve them differently as a chaplain. And, it just taught me a lot about the spectrum of what we call spirituality. And I think it's such a tiny glimmer of whatever it is that we're here for. And I would probably ascribe more to, if I was doing an organized religion, I would probably ascribe more, I would say I'm lean toward more Buddhist, Grateful Dead, and Patti Smith as my trinity.
Okay.
Now, I would not have been able to get into the theological seminary that I got into if I would have said that. Although I did mention the Big Lebowski and how the dude wrote a check for milk that was like, whatever, $2.11 in my entrance interview. And thank heavens, the guy that was interviewing me, who's a really esteemed reverend, he loved the Big Lebowski, so he got the joke, and they still let me in.
Nice. So let me ask then, I want to go back because you also said you've been a reader this whole time.
Yes.
So I have to ask, what are you reading? Are you reading specific things, everything, anything?
Well, I'm trying to read stuff that makes me laugh, and then I'm reading a lot of memoir and creative nonfiction. I will say I just started again, and I've read it 6 times now and given it to many, many people. There's a book called The Other Schulman by Alan Zweibel, which is one of the funniest laugh out loud books you could ever read. It kind of reminds me of Confederacy of Dunces.
I read that 2 years ago. Finally.
Yeah. So if you love that book, and especially if you have that Jewish background, you would probably really enjoy this book, The Other Schulman. And I think it came out probably 10 years ago. But Alan was, and I don't know him personally, although I'm a giant fangirl, but he was Gilda Radner's best friend, and he was early in Saturday Night Live, and he does just a lot of good things. He helped Billy Crystal produce his things on stage. And that book really comforts me and makes me laugh because it's the hero's journey, but in a very kind of like, you could say Ignatius Riley as a hero as well in Confederacy of Dunces.
Yeah.
So I love that book. And then I'm also, I've got Charles M. Blow, Fire Shut Up in My Bones. I've got Are You My Mother, Alison Bechdel. Oh, and my favorite thing, too, that I'm reading, because I always read 3 different books at the same time, is I'm reading Nick Cave's Faith, Hope, and Carnage. And those are the interviews that he did with his friend Sean O'Hagan, I guess, during COVID.
Okay.
And after the loss of his son. So a lot of it is about grief. And a lot of it is about being an artist, being true, finding that energy to be who you are. I think the real trick when you're working a 9-to-5 job is to bring as much of yourself to it every day, because then you don't have to cordon off each thing.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think I did a very bad job of that early on. Because it was very much like, I don't know, how do I, so, I mean, obviously Agent Palmer is a persona. It's not, it's, if you overlaid it with my actual persona, it's still a circle, but it is still a persona. And so, that didn't start till 5.
So is it like a Venn diagram though, where
the
circles meet up in a certain place in your sweet spot?
No, they would just be a circle. It would just be a singular. If it was red and blue, it would just be one purple circle. Like I'm not,
all right.
As Palmer, I'm not hiding anything, but it very much was, I don't know. So if I started it all now with where I am, I don't know that I'd need it. I think I could just be Jason. But I think to start out as a blogger and a podcaster, it was a lot easier. It's a lot more comfortable to be myself without my name attached. For some reason, I don't know what that was. And now, and look, when I started this podcast, I've always said, welcome to the show. I'm Jason Stershic, also known as Agent Palmer. And so from the beginning of this show, my show, I've always said that. But the 100 plus guest appearances on other shows that I was on that predate my first episode. I'd say 97 of them are just, hey, my guest today is Palmer. Like I was Jason maybe twice, right? And I make that delineation now, but then it was just like, no, I work from 9 to 5 as Jason, and then I come home at 5 o'clock and I don't have to be anymore.
Yeah.
Else.
I think if that was helpful to you at that time, that was a good thing. And actually, if you wonder about it, what it tells me is you were considering it during that time too, and it made sense. My husband, he kind of reminded me when I first met him. He's my second husband, keeper husband, but he's like Walter Mitty because he worked for a big hospital association. He went by his formal name, which is Jeff. And so during the day, it'd be Jeff Daniels. And then at night, it'd be Walter Daniels. And so, even when we were first going out, I think he had to tell me that on our first date when he handed me a CD. He had to explain, his name differentiation. But he was the same guy either way. He was always the same kind of person, that same heart either way.
So my wife knew me as Palmer first.
Oh, wow.
And then I think there was a visit, because we were a long distance relationship before she moved across the country to move in with me. And when she came here and I first had her meet my parents, I was like, all right, well, don't forget, like my parents, I mean, they know I'm Palmer, but they know me as Jason, right? Like, and then it was a thing where it was like, okay, and these people over here know me by a completely different nickname. And then we went up to visit my friends from college where my nickname was Jesus because I had the long hair, the beard, and I had when I was a college freshman, I had just arrived from a semester abroad in Jerusalem. So like it really fit well, but it was also like, okay, but we're about to go somewhere and you know me as Palmer. Yeah. But like these people we're about to go visit that you're going to meet for the first time know me as Jesus. Like that's what they call me. And so, and then there's the whole, but you'll also hear people just use my last name because there are a few Jasons in the circle. So you have to be prepared for what, and it was very much it wasn't, again, it's not a persona thing, but it very much is, I need to explain to you that I will turn my head at different names depending on where we are and who we're around.
Right.
And that's just a thing. And for me, it's normal. Like you could line up just 5 different people that it would be normal for me to hear 5 different names from each of them. And it's just, I know that that's unique. I know that's not most people. It's like, I'm like my given name, and then maybe I have a nickname with a group of people
or something.
Just one. And it's like, no, I got a few. And the fact that Palmer took off is always weird to me because I chose that one. Like most people don't get a chance to choose their nickname, right? Like that's rare. I didn't ask them to call me Jesus. That just happened, right? And I had an Orioles t-shirt with Gibbons on the back, and forever I was Gibby in that particular group. I wore the shirt once, but it's just that's just.
So one of my sons is named Gibby, so that's neat. Gibson. Gibby.
Yep. And so that's there. And so when I chose Agent Palmer as the brand, but I didn't I never envisioned people calling me it. And so that's how my wife knew me first it's just funny to me. Like
it's all parts of you too. I mean, and so, whether they're given or they're just names that you created or that other people call you, I see it as like, a form of endearment, to what we're presenting at any given time, and I think as long as you're upfront about it in terms of like, when your wife met you, she knew you as this, and then your parents called you. I mean, that's great. That's great.
So when I started the blog, I wanted to not write for myself. Part of it was very much that I was also writing for work and I wanted a split,
Yeah.
so when you looked up my name on the internet, you didn't see whatever I wrote about comics and then whatever I was writing professionally. I care a lot less about that now, but that was the thing. Have you always written as you?
I will. I was just thinking about this today. When I was married, I was Nettie Hartsock, and my PR firm was called the Hartsock Agency. And actually, at that time, and I sold that agency when I was 45, when my first marriage dissolved, and that gave me the chance to go to seminary then instead of seminary when I was 60. So I thought I'd be ahead of the game, and then when I retire, I'd go be a chaplain. But I did ghostwrite for very, very famous people. And so my mom used to call me the mom in pajamas who drops her kids off at school and then goes and writes for the world, because at that time I was writing, I think I was writing 6 different Huffington Post columns for 6 different pretty famous people at that time who were either famous before the blogging and the web and all of that really took off, or they needed to understand how to do all that. So I would be ghostwriting tweets, and I'd take somebody's book and they'd send me a galley of it, and I'd go through and highlight every single tweet they could make out of the book at the time. Or, I'd write Huffington Post columns. And so no, those didn't have any name on them but the person I was writing for. And the great thing was, it gave me a form of invisibility that I really enjoyed at that time, because the things that I was writing about, the people I wrote for, I did care deeply about what they were doing and what efficacy I could have through my words for them. But it gave me a distance that I needed at that time as a writer, because my kids were so little.
Was it easy to not be you? Like, did that take some practice, or?
No, it was great. It was really fun, because like I said, I'm a reader. And so it was a skill to get their voice, the way that they would sound, these different men would sound if they were doing a speech, for instance, at, the largest green event, earth green event in San Francisco, or wherever it may be. So it was a skill, and it actually taught me a great deal about listening.
Okay.
And I think that served me so much more than when I was a chaplain.
Well, and it probably taught you a lot about tone, which means when you write a new character, like you've had experience. Not many people get paid for their exercising for something that they want to do long term, such as writing. Right? Like, that's not.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned an author that is. I'm gonna preface this. There's an author. You mentioned an author who was always near and dear to my heart, but not in a way I wanted him to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'm sitting in my office, and to my right is the entire collection of Len Dayton, and below that is a third of all of the Clive Barker books, and behind me is the entire collection of Douglas Copeland, and
wow!
And upstairs is mainly an almost complete collection of Chuck Klosterman.
Oh wow!
The thing about this is, I do tend to find authors that I gravitate to that I love, and I read The Source 25 years ago, and I loved it then. It was probably one of the first really heavy books that I read for pleasure.
Oh, wow.
This past year, or within the last 12 months, I've read Chesapeake and fell in love with it, and I read Space and I fell in love with it. Yeah. And here's the problem. I know James Michener is equal to whatever the biggest collection I already have is.
Wow.
And I know that while I don't have the full collection of Michener, it's a slippery slope to go down, and I feel like I've already basically fallen down it.
Yeah. Was it, and I'm trying to think, did he write Hawaii too?
He wrote Hawaii.
That book.
Yeah. I haven't gotten to Hawaii yet. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, if I find an author I love, I become a completionist. It's just
Yeah.
kind of just happens. And
Yeah.
I think Michener's the next one.
Well, he's a great storyteller.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's just like, I never realized how engaging, look, and I, unlike you, I do only read one book at a time. That's just my process. But I do always tend to go alternate as much as I can, fiction and non, just to kind of have a reset.
Yeah.
But I always, having read the source, and that was my only Michener, I went, all right, that's fine. But if I wanted to read about history, I would just read nonfiction, right? Like that was my take. And then I was like, all right, well, I'll finally read Chesapeake, because it was been on my shelf for forever.
Oh yeah.
And I just went, all right, no, I get it. And then I read Space, and I went, okay, now I'm like, I'm done. Like I'm under the spell. Let's just keep reading them. Not all the time, spread them out, but it is very much like there is an amount of things he can get away with because it's historical fiction, and especially because it's not nonfiction.
Exactly.
Where he can weave in stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
And he's got that light touch where it doesn't feel heavy-handed. And it's just,
it's really neat. It really draws you in. I mean, his writing, for me, when I was very young, it was very important to me because it was historic in nature. He brought people to life. And I wanted to always write things that would bring people to life, and really make you understand the impact of different things in history. And, that, I guess that's why I really like his stuff. I really love Murakami too, all of his stuff, Norwegian Wood. I love that book so much. And I just like people that are writers. I love George Saunders, Lincoln in the Bardo. I mean, my goodness, what a great illustration of sorrowful grief. And that liminal space between death and life, and then what you leave, the people you leave behind. That book is just such a great example of that. And my favorite book that I reread, and I've actually handwritten out on yellow legal pads at least 3 times, is Dandelion Wine. And then I've also, on a yellow legal pad, written out several, As I Lay Dying, and A Razor's Edge by Somerset Maugham.
So I'm aware of this because I there was a Twitch streamer I was watching whose wife was writing out The Lord of the Rings.
Oh wow.
And I get, like, I kind of get it, but I've never, like, you're my first opportunity to ask, like, obviously it gives you a different perspective on the book, but like, what, obviously, like, go back to before, like, what was the first one? And
the first one I did was in high school, and it was Ray Bradbury, and it was Dandelion Wine. And I had already read the book. And then my mom, who was a single mom of 4 girls, she was going to school at night because she had changed her career at 45 to go back and be a school teacher and teach, just be a dyslexia teacher. So she had to go and get her master's to do that. So she would work all day and then go to school at night. And it was in Dallas at SMU. Ray Bradbury came to speak, and she saved up money to get her and I 2 tickets, and we sat on the front row, and he sat in a very regal red velvet chair, and he talked about his writing, everything he did. And he mentioned that he used to write, like, he'd see a story or a comic or something, and he'd write it down as a young man, like write it long handwriting. So I was like, well, I love his book. I'm going to do that. And then it also helped me get past writer's block and this idea that, you're blocked because all I know is I'm going to sit down and do something. Okay. I'm not going to leave until I do something. So for me, that was part of it. And then as I got older and still do it, it's very meditative. And it also reminds me of the joy of the word on paper. It also is very calming. muscle memory, because we're all on screens, we're all on computers all the time. It reminds you, you can handwrite things. We're losing the ability to handwrite things. And so I love it. For Faulkner, as I lay dying, I sound like such a nerd on this podcast. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right.
But it helped me see like his language, the way he could do things in that book and capture those folks. Unbelievable. When you write those words out that they're saying, it's unbelievable.
So with your own process, do you start handwritten? Is that...
I write a lot in little notebooks.
Okay.
I carry little notebooks with me. And again, because my husband is by night a musician, a lot of times when I go out and either he's playing or another band that we're seeing is playing, all of these ideas will come to me almost fully formed, and I'll just start writing them in my little notebook, like little stand-up notes to remember, like, here's the start, here's the middle. Oh no, start in the middle and then have the ending, and so I guess I've just kept it up in that fashion. My kids always give me notebooks for Christmas, and it's because they're, they know, they've been in the car with me since they were little. Mommy needs a notebook. Mommy needs a piece of paper. Write this down for mommy.
Yeah.
I have things that my kids wrote in crayon for me that turned into stories, and then it became, well, okay, open my notepad on my phone and just write down the 4 words I'm saying to you right now. So I have lots of those.
Okay. Yeah. Cause Steph went back to work, and I'm the primary caregiver during the day.
Awesome.
So we've made a very concerted effort not to be on the screen.
Oh yeah. That's good.
I don't mind the TV. I don't think the TV is as big of a problem as the phone is, but I still try and limit the TV as much as possible.
Yeah.
But it does mean that if I want to write, I do it with a pen and paper, which I did. I never completely gave up on that. But now that I'm, let's say, I get a break for lunch in which I either do work or my own work or whatever. But from the time Steph goes to work until lunch, if I want to write anything, it's with a pen and paper, because I don't want to stare at my phone. And I know that that people will say like, oh, well, it's not quite the same as scrolling. But when a kid looks at you staring at your phone, they don't know that you're writing something original versus just scrolling or messaging 100%. Or whatever. So I am writing, and now I'm writing while standing up, because as the kid gets taller and the hands get grabbier, it's like, no, I'm trying to write. Like, you can't play with this. As long as you don't eat it, like, you can play with the notepad when I'm done, but let me finish this thought. And I ignoring the blog, because when I write, and I want this will lead me to a question for you, but when I write for the blog specifically, I write ahead. I publish once a week. So I don't have to worry about, like, if I'm not inspired, I don't write. And so for that, if I'm inspired and I have something in my head, I'll grab a notebook and I'll write. I probably write a little bit more regularly for the intro and the outro of this podcast, where it's like, like, it's every 2 weeks. So it's like, all right, well, we got another intro. Like, you got to come, and the outros are a little bit harder, because it's like, all right, well, what do you want to say? And those are the ones where, all right, okay, it's time. Like, you have to go. And it's interesting because while it's the same process for writing, my blogs are very much when the inspiration hits me, and then all of a sudden I'm done. Oh,
that's
look,
wonderful.
The post is good.
Yeah.
But for the podcast, it's very much I can't wait for no, I got to record this tonight so it can go out tomorrow or whatever. Yeah. So I am forced to go through, whether it's cold or hot, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you find that, like, are you a strike while the iron's hot kind of writer? Are you it doesn't matter, I'm going to write when
it doesn't matter, I'm really going to write. I mean, I'm kind of always a writer. And even when I was a chaplain, I was a writer, because I had to chart patient stories, and of course, you're trying to chart the most clinical thing that is required of you to make sure that the people on your clinical team understand what is going on. But then also, as the chaplain, there are things specific to your work that matter, like if the patient I'm not talking about a specific patient, but I had so many like this, but if the patient is longing for something that you can help create with the clinical team, trying to get a hold of a son that he hasn't been in contact with, or a lot of times I had patients, there was a great nonprofit called Swan Songs in Austin, where patients would, especially on hospice, if they were real music lovers, and they might want someone to come and play something for them for the day. So that tells a story about a patient, because it means that some of their centeredness comes from hearing music. So those little things, that those are really character attributes of people. And so, I could say I was writing during the day, and then I'm kind of always thinking about writing. I have to be conscientious. I am really present in my life, but I do, like, everything comes to me in pictures, and then in sometimes just text. Like sometimes in my head, I'll see just this text like on a whiteboard. And I know that's something I should probably write down.
So if you're reading 3 books at a time,
mm-hmm.
how many writing projects do you have going on at any one time? Or just too many to number?
No. In my head, I probably have a couple. This last probably 6 months, I finally finished a 1-act play, which I'd never written a 1-act play before. So that was in my head a lot. And so I worked on that. And then I do write a lot of essays and then send those out, because those are really hard work. And so I spend a lot of time on those. But reading at night gives me kind of a break from myself, because, it's boring to reread your stuff all the time, or to think about your stuff all the time. So it's a good break. Since I've been in the MFA program, that is just incredible. The program I go to, which is a low residency program out of Louisville, Kentucky, at Spalding University, it has really been valuable, because they push you hard to write and create at the highest level. And so it's really kind of kicked me into gear. And the more you write, the more you want to write. And The more you write about things you care about, the more things come to you. It's almost like write that and then move on to the next thing.
What your job is not who you are. Nettie's experience with people at the end of their lives leaves no doubt about this statement. Many people need a life-changing event, often the death of a parent or close relative, to reevaluate their priorities. I still think as humans we are resilient enough to ignore the better demons of capitalism and follow our own motivations. As I said in this episode and in previous ones, I'm not suggesting anyone just get up and quit their job if they can't afford it, but I'm always in favor of treating the corporate capitalistic careers with as much nuance and care as they treat their workers, which is to say, all talk, very little follow through. So when the day is over, the day is over. Clock out and treat even the most professional career like you did your retail or fast food job in high school and college. You work when you are there. It's just a paycheck, because as we've seen, that's the truth. And when you clock out, spend time with those people whom you want and doing the hobbies and activities that drive you. You are not your job. So what do you want to do, and who are you? Are you a writer like Nettie, a blogger and a podcaster like myself? Are you a painter or a sculptor or a musician? Are you a chef or a baker or a candlestick maker? You get the point. Your career, unless it is your passion, should not define who you are. And even then, you have the right to change your mind. Nettie wanted to be a writer in 3rd grade, but this podcast has allowed me to speak with many individuals who started out wanting to be one thing only to be something else, and that is okay. Humans are adaptable for a reason. It's evolution. So just remember, what you do is not who you are, and what you want can, and in all likelihood will, change over time. Remember, time is undefeated, so make the most of what you have. Thanks for listening to the Palmer Files episode 181, and now for the official business. The Palmer Files releases every 2 weeks on Tuesdays. If you're still listening, I encourage you to join the discussion. You can find all related ways to contact Nettie or myself in the show notes. There, you can connect with Nettie on LinkedIn or subscribe to her Substack. Following in either place will mean you'll be alerted to whatever Nettie writes, publishes, or decides to do next. Sybil Stershic, my mom, was a special guest producer for this episode. The music for this episode was provided by Henno Heitur. Email and comments can be sent to this show at thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. And remember, your home for all things Agent Palmer is agentpalmer.com. All right, Nettie, do you have one final question for me?
Okay, I have been wondering this, and this is just an overall question about podcasting, but are you as irritated as I am that everyone calls everything a podcast, even though many things are moving to video, to technically video, which is different than podcasting?
Yeah. No, I mean, this is like a soapbox moment.
Kvetch on.
Like,
exactly.
Because here's the thing, right? So I think it's a cop-out because there are two things at play and they're both opposing like forces in a way. One, and I'm going to ignore the move of Apple Podcasts and Spotify to video podcasts because this goes back years already. Mm-hmm. And what it boils down to is this. This is an audio-only podcast, and that makes it a podcast. But the people that do video podcasts, even if it's just two talking heads or if it's on a set or whatever, they do not, they want to be called a podcast, but they also don't want to be called a YouTube video.
Gotcha.
And so they have to be called a video podcast because, well, technically I do, at the time, years ago, it would have been, technically you still can get this audio only on Apple or Spotify or Pocket Cast or whatever. So I am a podcast, but you can also watch us talking heads on YouTube, but we're a video podcast. We're not YouTubers. And I don't, as someone who, there are YouTubers I watch that I enjoy. Okay? Yeah. So I don't find the word YouTuber to be detrimental, but there are people of a certain age that go, I'm a video podcast. Well, actually, you're just a YouTuber that sometimes releases on Spotify. It's like, no. And so it's probably the funny part is, and I don't listen to it anymore because I listen to the old hosts, but Libsyn had a podcast called The Feed where they just talked about podcasting. Now, podcasting is very insular in that a lot of podcasts talk about podcasting. Yeah. And look, I co-hosted for
That's
a few.
That's the meta of podcasting.
It is.
Right?
I mean, I co-hosted the Podcast Digest with Dan Lizette for a little bit. Okay. So I know about talking podcasting with podcasting, and it's just the fact that The Feed went for like 500 or 600 episodes with Elsie as my favorite host. And it was just, okay, they would talk about the numbers and the this, that, and the other thing. And it was mainly from what they saw as Libsyn, the host, which is probably only degrees different from what you'd get at like Buzzsprout or any of the other hosts.
Right.
But it all boiled down to the fact that like this conversation about is a video podcast a podcast, I have heard them talk about to death, and it is very much a personal thing.
Okay.
I just think that podcasting in its original form as on-demand audio only
right.
was so personal.
I
It's
think
in
so
your
too.
ears. Most people
I think so too.
Yeah, we don't
It's a whole different sense.
And
your hearing and taste are one of the last things to go when you're dying.
So it's just, so all of that is to say it's about your consumer. And I think that's truly what it's about. So if I were to bite the bullet one day and go, all right, I'm going to do this as a video podcast, I don't think it would be as intimate. And I'm not talking you and me. You and me,
yeah.
Because I've always maintained that unless there's technical difficulties, you and I are looking at each other through the internet.
Of course.
And I have an in-person studio that like 7 people have been in because most of my guests are spread around the country or around the world. But that's just, we're having the conversation. The listener, of which I was and am for a very long time, I don't watch podcasts unless they are one of those podcasts that's only like it's only on YouTube and it's nowhere else.
Yeah.
But if I have a choice to do audio only, that's where I am. And that's where, and this is where the disservice is to everyone that we're using podcast as a ubiquitous term for a conversation or a conversation around people, is that when people talk about the success of podcast ads, especially host-read podcast ads, that's because if you listened to Mark Maron and he read an ad,
his name in my head. Yeah.
When he read an ad, he was your friend telling you a thing.
I know, exactly.
And that is, and Maron, I appreciate everything he did, and he was an inspiration of mine. And I understand that he probably reached the end. Yeah. And I'm sad that he reached the end for one reason. He was the top audio only podcast that I could point to. There is no one else I can point
100%.
to. Everybody else.
I was just thinking of him yesterday when I thought, if I get to ask him a question, I'm going to ask about this.
Yeah, because now, like, I understand that the top 10 is now full of their video. Exactly. Or their video front. And look, don't let anyone fool you. If you want to start a podcast, you absolutely can, and it doesn't have to be video. If you want it to be video, it's a lot more work. If you want it to be good, or it's a lot more raw, right? And I talk about this all the time. I'm good at editing audio. Most of my episodes are edited a lot, but you don't know it because you don't hear it. Because
you're good at it. You're skilled at it.
And you don't hear it. So if you don't hear it, you don't know there was an edit. If you see it jumping all around, or you need cover, or you need this, or you need that, it's just, no, I don't. And it also boils down to, this is tangentially related. I never found it offensive when people called me a blogger. But I understand that people do throw it around as a derogatory term.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you can't hurt me with the word no, this is what I am. I'm a podcaster and a blogger. And yes, I like to say I'm a storyteller and what was it? At one point, somebody said I'm a feature writer and conversationalist or something like that.
I love
there were other ways, but truly, I'm a podcaster and a blogger. And I like to talk and I like to write, and it's just like but there's no reason to be ashamed of any of that stuff.
Yeah, 100%.
And as we're recording, somewhere in the last week, I saw online that LimeWire's 25 years old, and like that kicked off, or 26 or whatever, and it's like the peer-to-peer sharing kicked off from that beyond Napster, and it's just like, and there were blogs back then, and you know what? considering blogging has been killed many times over the last 10 years, it's still going pretty strong for something.
It's still going on.
Yeah.
It's still going
and
on.
So,
and there's still, there's still a real reason for it to be a form of expression.
And again, reading. It's reading, and it's the same reason that audio podcasts will not go anywhere, because there is an intimacy that only exists in this way. And if you were inspired, I was inspired by Mark Maron. He's one of many who inspired me, and all of the others were also audio only podcasts. Wow. So what am I going to create? An audio only podcast, right? And I enjoyed reading blogs, and at one point I decided I can do that. I'm going to write a blog. That's not to say I wouldn't dabble in video, but it would be something else. It would not be this. And it's just, all right. So if all of the people who were inspired by Maron had audio only podcasts, then the people that we inspire will probably also have audio only podcasts. There's no reason.
I think that's a great hope.
Yeah.
That's a great hope that they do, because they're going back. A lot of our people that are younger than us are getting offline completely, or they're doing different things, to be more aligned to how they really want to present themselves and not be commodified.
And it's always amazed me, because I am technically an elder millennial, but I'm not. Mm-hmm. I believe I'm truly just a young Gen Xer is the way I feel, because I hung out with people older than me a lot of the time, especially during those, from like 14 through 20, I hung out a lot older with many people older than me. And I was never generationally challenged in that, because I was an only child. My parents would take me to events, and I could talk to people that were their age. So when I was 10 and they were in their 30s and 40s, I was talking to people in their 30s and 40s. I see a lot. I probably understand a lot more of Gen X stuff than I do anything else. Boomer is it's a bit weird, because while we had the same upbringing, but by the time I'm 14, technology's vastly different. Yeah. But I only bring it up because it's this thing about going backwards and holding on to whatever you want and whatever that's going to be. And I talked about not wanting Mishner to be a forefront of a collection, because I don't have the shelf space right now. But the thing about it is, I refuse to buy the ebooks. I've always refused to do the ebook thing. I will take an advanced ebook copy if an author sends me one, because I understand they're not printed yet. Exactly. But I want to hold the book. Okay. Yeah. I want to hold the book. Paper. I think I may want to go back to CDs. I have a small vinyl collection. I don't love vinyl enough to go like, oh, it's vinyl, but I do kind of miss CDs. And
they're coming back. My husband has probably 400 CDs, and gosh knows how many vinyls he has. He's also got cassette tapes. He has VHS tapes.
And cassettes are coming back.
And it's all kind of this natural thing of, I think if capitalism is over nurtured, the nature of those who want to operate kind of outside of that constant drone of making everything a commodity, we go back to things that are more natural.
And most importantly,
and that we can touch and pick up and put on a record player.
I was going to say,
put in a CD player.
I can sit in my office and be surrounded by, how many? I got 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 bookshelves. Yeah. Covered in books, comics, magazines, and CDs and vinyl. If for some reason, and they're all behind me and beside me, right? If for some reason whatever I'm working on the screen doesn't work, I can turn around and see everything. Some of it's unread. Some eventually, like I plan on reading all the books in my house. But it's very much like I can turn around and look at that. And I remember specifically remembering that the future that we were promised in the 2000s was sterile. Mm-hmm. There was nothing in any of it was a screen and maybe a potted plant. And I look at my house, and in my living room, there's a bookshelf with CDs and Blu-rays and DVDs, and there's another bookshelf with actual books on it. And I can't imagine living in a place in that, future we were promised that was white walls, black furniture, clear tables, and no bookshelves. And not even,
100%.
and even when there were bookshelves, nothing on them. That seems like, what are you even doing?
I know. It seems there's an emptiness to that I think is, it's costly to your life, in your inner life. It's costly long term.
Yeah.
And I think these kids, and I call them kids, I mean, my older son Bug is 31, my younger son Gibson is 26. So, they're not interested in things like that. Now, they always grew up around books, so they were less screen kids. I think you just need to find a balance.
Yeah.
But I also think just everything being available only when you are subscribed to another thing, or it's on an iPad, or like Amazon just put out that they're not supporting indie Kindles that were made before. I think it's 2017. I mean, I have one of the first Kindles. I remember when Jeff Bezos, I was at the book expo at Javits Center in New York, and it's when I was doing PR for book authors. And I remember him flying in. He came from a golf game. He introduced the Kindle on stage, and that was years ago. And so, but then it's no longer supported. So I'm into my books support me because I put them on a shelf and I can pick them up.
Yeah. Yeah. And
when I need something.
Well, I wrote about that particular announcement because I was like, I guess it's time to jailbreak my Kindle because I don't want, I'm officially done. I'm not okay, I'll lose some stuff. That's fine. I kind of still need an e-reader because I'm friendly with authors, and I'll get PDFs that I'll need to read that I just don't want to sit in front of a screen. But it's all right, okay. It's just, all right, that's fine. But it's also the reason that I'm more and more likely to spend $20 once a month buying DVDs than I am to a streaming service that I just don't always get to. Right. It's just, I'm with you. I think I'm happy when I hear about authors, because this is when we talk about podcasting versus video podcasting. There's also the authors that are churning out as many ebooks as possible. Yeah. Even the ones that aren't using any technological help, with a different discussion altogether. But the ones who are just sitting down and writing for 4 months, here's an ebook, and then writing for 4 more months, and here's an ebook. It's but nobody owns any of that stuff.
I know.
So I understand that you may have somebody who's read all your stuff, but are they a true fan? They can't be here's my shrine to author whatever. It's no, it's all in this one thing that could get bricked at any moment, or it's no, and I appreciate the author friends I have who are no, I'm trying to get published. And even if I have to self-publish,
well, it's independent publishing now, so it's not self-published because it's independent. It's gained a little bit of authority, but still, I totally know what you're saying.
And you want I've seen the videos of the first time you get a shipment of your own book.
It's so fun.
It cannot be that great to publish an ebook. It cannot feel as good as opening a package of your own books.
Hilarious.
Just not going to happen.
That's funny. I guess you could have 30 Kindles around the table, all up on the table display, and you sitting there, and they all come live with your book cover at once, and you clap for yourself. It doesn't seem like it'd be the same thing as using a box cutter and opening your books and pulling them out.